it's great to see you. This is the first event that is organized through the Graduate Center for Europe for this academic year, and it's a collaboration with Media Diversity Institute. The way that the format is going to be is that I'm going to make the introductions now, and then we're going to go into a conversation with our great panelists here, and then the floor will be open for Q&As. I'm going to start by introducing the Graduate Center for Europe, Media Diversity Institute, the event, the panelists, and at the end, myself. So the Graduate Center for Europe is an interdisciplinary initiative which launched in 2005, involving 4 postgraduate researchers and staff from the College of Arts and Law, College of Social Sciences, and the College of Natural Sciences at the University of Birmingham. Media Diversity Institute works international to promote media and information literacy, combat disinformation, and facilitate responsible coverage on diversity issues in local and international media. We encourage accurate and nuanced reporting on race, religion, ethnicity, class, age, disability, gender, and sexual identity issues in media landscapes around the world. This event, as I mentioned, is a collaboration between the Graduate Center for Europe and MDI, and it is the first GCFE event of this academic year. It also acts as a launch of a new report that MDI has prepared as part of the project Get the Trolls Out, in which we have explored anti-Semitism and anti-Vax discourse in Europe through media monitoring in 7 European countries. And these countries are also the countries where Get the Trolls Out focuses on, which is Belgium, Flanders and Wallonia, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Poland, and the UK. And through this report, we try to find similarities and differences in the discourse, as well as similarities in more historical discourse on anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories. Through today's discussion, we're going to explore the themes of the report more broadly, and we will try to look at the connection of conspiracy theories to anti-Semitism and the role of social media. Our panelists are Anikó Félix, a sociologist with a PhD from ELTE in Hungary. Her fields of expertise are far-right organizations with a focus on their gender aspect, right-wing populism, and anti-Semitism. Anikó serves as the scientific secretary and researcher at the Goldziher Institute and as a case manager for combating anti-Semitism at the World Jewish Congress. Tamás Berecz is a sociologist and criminologist with expertise in the media, especially those with racist tendencies against the Roma in the Hungarian and international press. He has been heavily involved in the analysis of anti-terrorist legislation and its conflicts with human rights. Tamás has been working as an operational manager at the International Network Against Cyber Hate since 2016. Simone Rafael is a chief editor at Belltower.news, the journalistic website of Amadeu Antonio Foundation, which counters far-right extremism, anti-Semitism, and racism in Germany by strengthening and empowering democratic actors and organizations. Simone is also head of all digital projects of Amadeu Antonio Foundation and develops ideas against far-right extremism and hate on social media platforms. And last but not least, Giulia Dessì is a project manager at Media Diversity Institute and currently coordinates the Get the Trolls Out project. Get the Trolls Out is a cross-European project that counters anti-religious hate speech by exposing individuals and organizations, finding and debunking dangerous narratives in the media, and by educating young people about how to spot and respond to social hate speech, to online hate speech. Giulia is also a freelance journalist, a researcher, a trainer, and with a focus on hate speech, discrimination, and disinformation. And she's also the co-author of the new report that we are launching today. And I am Marianna, Karakoulaki, a journalist, a communication manager for Media Diversity Institute, and a PhD researcher at the University of Birmingham. And today I'm wearing 2 hats, both the one from as a member of the committee of the Graduate Center of Europe and as a communication manager of Media Diversity Institute. I would like to welcome everyone once again and our speakers. And I would like to kick off this discussion by asking Simone, why do you think that COVID-19 vaccine has become so central to conspiracy theories?
Yes, thank you very much, Marianna. This is a small question to start the discussion, I would say. No, stop with joking. Let's get into the discourse. I would say that we have seen in the last 2 years that people who turn to conspiracy ideologies do so because they seek simple solutions for complex problems. And we see that this is especially true within a deadly worldwide threatening pandemic we are in at the moment, which is even so new that scientists still have to do research and debate all the possibilities to combat this pandemic. So this is obviously a reason to frighten and confuse people and to make them feel uncertainty and a kind of loss of comfort. So they are seeking to stabilize themselves. And one way to do this, as we see, is to deny the pandemic totally and saying this is not really happening. And another way is, of course, looking for someone to blame. And this is what I think we see in this conspiracy narrations we're talking about today, because this is a part of the seemingly solution the people turn to. They look for someone to blame, and they choose either anti-democratic argumentations, so blaming governments, parliaments, and their measures, what they're doing to protect their societies, or they define the outgroups, the enemies, as some kind of secret elites, which are mainly a dog whistle for Jews and Jewish people, who are claimed to form secret elites to neither rule the world or conquer the world or have profits from it. So very old anti-Semitic topoi, I would say, which are used in this. And we see this combined with the pandemic at the moment, combined with more classical anti-Semitic conspiracy narrations like the New World Order or the Great Reset. And we had this, of course, not only within the pandemic, but also beforehand, that there's an anti-vax scene. So people who do not believe in scientific medicine, especially in Germany, we have a very long tradition, I would say, of so-called alternative medicine, homeopathy, and things like that. So people turn to more nature-like argumentation, saying they want to believe in oils or other measures brought from nature, or like used in the Middle Ages, and they prefer rather to scientific medicine, which, for example, brings vaccinations to people to protect them from deadly pandemics. So I think we see a mixture of all this at the moment in these discourses we see around the COVID-19 vaccine. And this is also fueled, of course, by far-right activists who see a possibility to influence the anti-vax discourse in an anti-democratic direction. So, for example, bringing these fears anti-vaxxers have. For example, they mistrust a lot of society actors, like, for example, the pharma industry, saying they're not producing medicine to help people, but just to make money. And they also do mistrust the politicians, saying they're paid by pharma industries. And if you add far-right actors on these discourses, you can see that they try to activate people into action. So saying, if you mistrust your government, why not overthrow it? So they try to make their political statements within this discourse around fears of people. So this is a very problematic combination, I would say, we see at the moment. And so the outcome of all these combinations of conspiracy narrations we see in all countries all over Europe is that it starts with kinds of medical disinformation, which is also a problem, because it even can seriously injure or kill people if they get wrong advice, like taking chlorine dioxide or ivermectin. But on the other hand, we see a spread also of political disinformation, who really try to use this pandemic to reassure people of anti-Semitic narrations, like I said beforehand. So I think this is a problem we are facing at the moment together, that fear is spread about secret ingredients the new vaccines would contain. neither be it microchips or something else, to control minds and to overthrow, to bring harm to the people. And this are the narrations we are seeing in all kinds of alternative media and far-right actors at the moment. And we see as is used to destabilize the idea of democracy in Europe as well. I would like to add at the end of this that it is obvious if you look into the world of anti-vaxxers that this is also a very fearful world. It's not a happy world, because these people are also very confused, even though they're dangerous to democracy. So I think this is a situation we have to work on.
Thank you, Simone. And you mentioned the Great Reset, which is one of the narratives that we have seen through media monitoring, and it's quite out there. You also mentioned the presence of secret societies, secret elites. And I would like to ask Anikó that we've seen that those secret societies that when they're used in conspiracy theories, they usually, those who use them as a narrative, they usually mean that they are Jewish. And we have seen that generally anti-Semitism has been very central to conspiracy theories for centuries. What do you think this is the case, and what can you tell us about the Hungarian context?
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's another easy question to answer. So without going to a history lecture, I think it goes back for the first question, the first part of the question, the why anti-Semitism is the core of these conspiracy theories, with the history of anti-Semitism itself. So it just not go back farther. In the Middle Ages, the blood libel cases were basically based on the misinformation, the lack of information about the Jewish practices, the religious practices, and the fact that Jewish people were apart from the majority society. And this made them the perfect target, and they were accused for having children's blood and using it for religious practices. And just in brackets, it goes back or comes back or didn't go anywhere, because it's there in the QAnon theory as well, that the members of Cabal are harvesting children's blood. So these tropes are continuously there. And the second chapter in history, which is important to highlight and to understand why anti-Semitism is the core, maybe just to make it very simple, the 19th century, until the 19th century, Jewish people got emancipated, and they got almost all political and economic rights, and some of them could gain businesses, companies, and this was a time when capitalism started, and this was the new format for the Jewish people, some of the Jewish people who get beneficial situation in the societies, and because of the historical restrictions get this economic status that was caused by the historical restrictions, of course, but in the new system, it was beneficial for them, and this made the other people think about these theories and started to create these great conspiracy theories like the Elders of Zion and the Freemasonry. And the third chapter I would like to highlight is after the Holocaust, the Second World War, when this kind of explicit Jewish content in these theories were more and more missing. And what you also mentioned in this report, that the coded language started to be spread. And what you also said, that it's very important that nowadays we have to read between the lines, that the Jewish, even the expression is not there, it's the same conspiracy myth, and it's the same narrative. Which is what Simone also described before, that the elite and us. So this is basically these three chapters that I wanted to highlight to understand the why. And regarding Hungary, I would say that this country has great tradition of accepting conspiracy theories. And also, if we see the latest research on that, which was made, for example, by the Action and Protection Foundation in 16 countries regarding anti-Semitism, and the acceptance of the item, quote, there is a secret Jewish network that influences political and economic affairs in the world. Hungary was the second country who accepted the second most acceptance rate of this item. The first was Greece, actually. So this illustrates well at how big the problem is, actually. And so this is the attitudinal level, and to see the discursive level, I would mention an anti-Semitism report that we released with the Jewish Federation during the summer, where I analyzed the different anti-Semitic incidents from the last 2 years. And I distinguished two types of conspiracy theories in the public discourse. One is that what I called local theories, that focusing on a specific contemporary or historical event of one society, like in this case, the Hungarian society, so what's specific. And the other type is what I called global theory and local aspects of global theory, which of course, all conspiracy theories are more or less global, but there are, what I see as a pattern, that they are more and more globalized. So, so what I saw in the last 2 years, that what we see in Hungary, the more globalized theories are widespread, like the QAnon and the COVID-related theories, and less those that are local and true only for Hungary and relevant only for the Hungarian situation, I would say. So these globalized version patterns are also important, as I see. And regarding that, who is the actors, the representatives of these theories, I would say that one actor that you also mentioned in the report, or one type of actor, is those so-called individual experts that appear all the countries, and the other is just simply to say the far right. What distinguish the two, I think, is that these experts that are not belong to the far right, they have a message that they are inclusive in a way, that you are invited if you are against the vaccination or skeptical towards the whole seriousness of the virus. So regardless of your origin, your party preferences, you are welcome among us. And the other group is the far right, who is naturally exclusive and say that you are welcome, but you shouldn't be part of the LGBT community and the Roma community. So this is an exclusionary way of this group thinking. And I think it's important to distinguish these two groups. Maybe not only in Hungary, but it's also relevant. And if we compare the impact of these two groups from the last few months, I think the far right started to dominate the discourse and the terrain of communicating about anti-vax feelings. And yeah, and the reason why they have to focus on this topic, because this is the only topic that they can own in this regard, because most of the right-wing stories and topics are covered by the government communication. And the far right, called the Our Homeland Party, which is the newest far right formulation, and they satellite or organizations around the network of this party realize that this is the topic that they have to focus on, because all the left-wing parties and the government also very much in their communication pro-vaccine and not denying the virus. So they had to occupy this territory. This is basically just one element of the communication. And you mentioned the Great Reset or the new world order. This is the whole can be placed in a logical series, because all the activities, the so-called activities, the new world order, is basically aims to destroy the nation, Europe, the white people, the Hungarians. So it's all about threatening those who follow these ideas, and the ways that are changing throughout the time. So threatening us with the change of the ethnic composition through migration, threatening us with change our sexual orientation through the so-called gender or LGBT lobby, and now it's threatening our physical existence with the virus, and later on with the vaccination. And finally, it's also threatening us, and I will finish here, through the destroying of the economy, and with the way that those people who are not vaccinated will lose their job. And this is what the far right currently use. That it's not new, of course, but they literally try to give protection to those people, and saying that they do solidarity actions not only to not vaccinated people, but now focusing on them. And one of the recent actions of the leader of the party, this far-right party, who is also a mayor of a town, offered jobs for those people who are not willing to vaccinate themselves. So it's a real protection, so they can actually give real answers to this insecure situation, those who belong to this group. So basically, this is what I need to say. Your question.
Thanks a lot. It was quite interesting to hear the Hungarian context, because we don't hear that much about these kind of issues in specific countries throughout Europe. I remember when I was working in a DVD club, my boss was very obsessed with certain conspiracy theories. For example, JFK was still alive in his mind. However, and that was like 10, 15 years ago. And but these were between us. He was sharing these theories with me, with people that came to the DVD club, and people that he knew generally. What we notice now, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, is that these theories are everywhere. And they spread in a very weird way, in the sense that they don't make any sense. So Tamás, why do you think the spread of conspiracy theories is different to the past, and what are the dangers in believing them?
Yes, hello everybody. Well, I think that both the theories changed to a certain extent in what they are aiming to achieve within society and within the groups of people who believe in them. But that's, I think, the smaller part of the change that's been happening. What's really changed and what's really propelled these theories kind of into the forefront from the kind of dark corners of the internet of the 90s or something like that is how we communicate with one another and the platforms we use, and how those platforms are aiming to keep us in front of our computers for as long as possible, and the algorithms that aim to provide us with as much interesting and exciting content as possible, no matter basically the content of those videos or news or fake news articles that they deliver to us. So the first part is basically that there has there have always been theories that try to explain the workings of the whole world. The whole protocols of the elders of Zion, or the Zionist occupied government, or the Freemasons. These were all types of theories that try to explain kind of the whole of the world and why it works the way it works. But most of the theories that were, I think, popular in general were kind of answers to single issues or certain things, and they didn't try to be as like a theory of everything in the world. For instance, that the 9/11 was an inside job because the US wanted the oil and they wanted to be able to invade Iraq and stuff like that. So that's one specific thing. The flat Earth is another, that NASA made up the whole thing to gain funding, and other weird theories around that. That's also like one fairly limited thing. But now basically what we see is that there are these new theories that kind of aim to internalize all these other theories into themselves and try to give a full-blown worldview to their believers. And from then on, these groups of people basically become cults via securitization. By that I mean that they are presented with a threat that's basically existential to their culture, to their lives. It's a very, very well closed off system in which basically everything has some kind of fairly easy answer, which obviously always lowers anxiety about these things, because you feel that if you understand something and you understand how the world works, then you can protect yourself from these things. And obviously, with the securitization, which just basically means that that the other or something out there is described as an existential threat to somebody. Basically, they kind of also open up these people to the possibility to defend themselves, even via destroying democracy or basic values that we've been believing in for decades, or even protect themselves with violence against others. And that's definitely one thing that's changed quite a lot. And I think one of the biggest examples of this is this whole QAnon thing, which hasn't really kind of injected any new or novel into the conspiracy theory field. But basically, the only thing that was new is that somebody kind of, or multiple people came, forward as Q, spreading misinformation, and they just took basically Pizzagate, and they took, the Freemasons and the deep state conspiracy theory, and basically they picked up everything and they tried to kind of combine it into this whole world explanation, and they were kind of able to bring in everybody, into this fold and explode into the scene. And I guess the most interesting part in that is that this was really, when it exploded in the US, was a very, very pro-Trump kind of thing, but then it managed for some reason to become global outside the US and completely unrelated to Trump and the Republican agenda in the US or whatever. And when you turn these conspiracy theories into these kind of theories that explain everything in the world that worries you, then it can very easily turn into a cult where no external information can kind of persuade you about you maybe being wrong about something, because everybody on the outside can be the agent of the enemy, basically, and from then on you don't have to listen to them. So that's one side of the coin. But the other side is really that mainstream politicians are definitely much more prone nowadays to dabble into these theories, and even if not accepting them outright, they definitely have these little dog whistles to the people who do believe in them, signaling them that, I am the one for you, kind of. If you believe in these things, I can represent you in the political sphere, and I don't think we had seen that beforehand, that really mainstream politicians, who are in power, would so blatantly disregard, truths and facts, basically for their own, agenda. And the third thing is really our public sphere. And I think that's the biggest thing, that's, gone through a magnificent change. So much so that simply, I think, us as humans and as societies, we just can't catch up with our own creation, kind of in this situation. And people are just not ready. They don't know how to consume the information that they are being fed to in a way that's critical, to insert filters. We had this system where people were given news, that went through editorial rooms and publishing companies and all that. So basically, there were multiple people in there that were gatekeepers in a certain way on one hand, but also they were also kind of a filter to disinformation or misinformation and just falsehoods. And obviously that all went out of the window. So now we kind of expect everybody to be extremely knowledgeable about everything, so they can kind of sift through all the very scientific, information that they are receiving nowadays on the vaccine and on COVID, and in a situation where everything is very, very fluid, because even the scientific community is unsure of many, many things. I mean, this is a very, very novel virus. We know way more about it now than we, used to just a year ago or a year and a half. That's true. But I think that has been one of the other issues. If we focus now on conspiracies around the vaccine and around COVID in general, is that scientific communication, I think, has been abysmal on this whole thing. Because on one hand, the scientific community really tried to show their confidence and that they are, that they know what they are talking about. But they somehow forgot that that's not necessarily the best approach to this when you don't know everything about a certain thing. So they really fell into kind of a pit where they very, very assuredly, told things in the beginning of the pandemic. We don't need masks, or this spreads a certain way, and other things like that. And then obviously, as we started knowing more and more, it turned out that these things weren't necessarily true or true as they were presented to us. And many people, I guess, after a while, just threw their hands up, into the air, and they were like, yeah, these people don't know anything. Like, why should I believe them? They change their minds every 6 months or so about this. And that's definitely an issue. So I do think that also scientific communication played a role if we talk about the COVID part of this whole thing. But the rest is really social media and just the fact that it has a massive capability of normalizing very, very fringe things. So it can pull in people who otherwise would never have seeked out, a far-right forum or blog, but suddenly, it was shared by somebody who you knew in high school 25 years ago, and then you read it and it seemed okay, and then another one popped up, and then another one popped up as a YouTube video, and you watched that, and there were like 25 others like that suggested to you below that video. And that's just something that people are not prepared for, I think. And finally, I think why COVID-specific conspiracy theories were able to be so successful in a certain way is that the COVID kind of created the perfect storm that brought together the right-wing conspiracies and some of the left-wing conspiracies about big pharma and the whole new age clean eating communities that are very much against any type of chemical intervention in people's bodies and everything. And far right kind of managed to pull in some of these people with this kind of meeting point in the middle. So they came from very, very different points of view, but they kind of met, and they found common ground in the rejection of the vaccine and maybe even COVID in general, because there's a lot of denying of the virus even up until now, obviously.
Took me 3 tries to unmute myself. Thank you, Tamás. So in my understanding, COVID managed to unite far right and left, far left conspiracies, and they bloom through social media. That's a very basic description. I would like to go to Giulia because this event also acts as a launch of a report that we did at Media Diversity Institute about anti-Semitism and anti-Vax discourse. And I would like to ask you, Giulia, why did you decide to explore this issue and what are some of the key findings?
Yeah, thank you, Marianna. Yes, so within Get the Trolls Out, we have a team of monitors at our partner organizations in 7 European countries, and they monitor traditional media, new media, and social media, trying to identify content that has Islamophobic and anti-Semitic discourses, statements, or tropes. So in 2020, already after the pandemic happened or broke out, we already noticed anti-Semitic conspiracy theories proliferating online, and we continue researching this. I mean, we explored this topic through articles, but also in-depth research, such as 2 reports on QAnon showing that COVID denial and accusations against Jewish elite were central. So our monitoring continued focusing on this as well. And then after the vaccine rollout in Europe, especially in some countries, they started observing the increasing presence of anti-Semitism within anti-vaccine narratives on social media and also offline in street protests. So we decided to investigate this further in all the project countries to understand the extent of this phenomenon and also the role of social media in the spread of these narratives. Because of course, like vaccine campaigns and the requirement to show vaccine passport could be criticized, but what we were seeing and what we were concerned and we are denouncing in our report is that when they articulate dangerous anti-Semitic stereotypes, and those are also becoming hate speech trends online and offline. So we decided to focus especially on Facebook and Twitter as the main social media platforms, though I have to say that like anti-Semitic content within these anti-vaccine narratives is definitely not limited to Facebook and Twitter, and actually it's very much present on other platforms that are largely unmoderated, for example, Telegram. So we focused on, we asked our monitors to monitor anti-vaccine content and try to identify anti-Semitic tropes. Actually in one country we also included YouTube due to its prominence. So what we noticed was that in all countries there are Holocaust comparisons. So anti-vax conspiracists are making a parallel between the current pandemic restrictions and the Nazi Germany. So some anti-vaxxers consider themselves as a persecuted minority within their own country. And how we are seeing this is through, for example, the reproduction of the yellow Star of David that was used in Nazi Germany and its occupied territories to identify Jewish people. So the word Jew is replaced by the word unvaccinated. Or, for example, in the UK, in the UK, there isn't really a vaccine passport or a health pass, but only the prospect of having a health certificate was enough to label it as a new Nazi tool. Or in Belgium, in the Flanders, those who advocate for vaccination are called vaccinazis. And there are comparisons between anti-vaxxers and or protesters saying with victims of the Nazi persecution. So Sophie Scholl or Anne Frank, we saw this especially in Germany in protesters saying, I feel like Anne Frank because I cannot celebrate my birthday. And also there is a parallel with the Nuremberg. So like scientists and medical professionals today that are battling the pandemic are compared to Nazi doctors and nurses that were prosecuted at the Nuremberg trials for conducting medical experiments in Nazi concentration camps. And so some activists, anti-vax activists today, they are claiming that there will be a similar trial against those people who are in charge of the COVID-19 preventing measures. And this happened especially, like we noticed especially in the UK and in Poland, but not only. So what is happening with this is that this comparison is very dangerous because it downplays the gravity of the persecution and oppression of Jews under the Nazi regime, but also throughout history. So it's a kind of a denial of what anti-Semitism has caused and inflicted on those who are Jewish or are also perceived as Jewish, not only Jewish people. Another key finding are like the anti-Semitic conspiracy narratives that other speakers have mentioned on Jewish world domination. One of them is the New World Order, which is a classic conspiracy ideology. And this ideology has different permutations or variations. And so now with the pandemic, it adapted and it's mainly, we saw hashtags with New World Order and a lot of anti-vaxxers talking about it, but also like the newest version is the Great Reset that was mentioned before. So there is according to some people, there is this secret global elite controlling world events, plotting to establish a totalitarian regime where humans are enslaved, and they are doing this through the pandemic. Some people are claiming that the COVID-19 pandemic has been created to reduce the planet population and enforce authoritarian measures. And this conspiracy ideology is anti-Semitic when there is a coded language, when the people in this sinister and mysterious group that has influence are labeled as puppeteers or string pullers or globalists. So as it was mentioned before, sometimes it's not necessary to use the word Jews or Jewish people to be anti-Semitic, because there is anti-Semitic dog whistles or like a coded language. And so Jewish people are blamed, and people in the circles know that Jewish people are blamed, but it's not said explicitly. And this one was another of our findings, like how anti-Semitic dog whistles are used in the anti-vaccine groups and movements. And we saw this, I make just 2 examples in France with the word qui, which means who. So you can see protests in the streets, but also many posts on Facebook and Twitter with the hashtag qui, implying that there is a Jewish elite, like Jewish people in key influential sectors, and they are controlling these sectors and deciding what is happening with the COVID measures. And this is also often used with other phrases such as who is the enemy? So assumptions that the vaccines are produced or funded by Jewish figures. And then there is the more classic accusations against, for example, the US philanthropist George Soros. So it's like Jewish figures are used as a symbol of the whole like global elite that is identified as Jewish. And then I just wanted to mention like connections with the far right that we mentioned before as well. This is present in several countries, but yeah, we saw that different groups of people share content. So yes, the connection with far right is very much present, but also in other countries, this is less evident on platforms such as Facebook and Twitter, for example, where it is very much ordinary people sharing this content, or also influencers, often people that are coming from the health sector already, like former doctors or nurses. And also, yeah, so it's not like homogeneous among the countries that we research, but it's different actors. Then I wanted to mention also that after Facebook and Twitter started cracking down some content that was spreading COVID misinformation and violent anti-Semitic content, many anti-vaxxers fled or like left these platforms and went to other unmoderated platforms like as I mentioned, Telegram. And also on Facebook, Facebook allows private groups. So our research didn't go we didn't go into private groups because it was quite difficult and long to access. So there is a lot more that is being shared on Facebook than it is visible, and these groups are not moderated. So people can share anti-Semitic and anti-vaccine content without any consequences in these groups. Yeah, these are more or less the main findings of the report, and these things have been noticed in all countries, but the magnitude is quite different. So in a country like France, for example, like with the spreading of the spreading of this anti-Semitic anti-vaccine theories is really widespread compared to other countries. For example, like Hungary, on our research on Facebook, it emerged less in a less evident way. But again, our research was about Facebook and Twitter, and Twitter again in Hungary is not very popular. So yeah.
Thank you, Giulia. I remember when we decided to do this report, we were quite stressed about finding the proper timeline in which we should monitor, because we thought that we won't have many findings if we keep spreading it. However, we were proven very, very wrong. And for me, the most striking findings through this research, and by generally looking into anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories in COVID-19 specifically, is that even though that anti-vaxxers blame everything to a Jewish conspiracy. At the same time, they see themselves as the victim of a Holocaust, or victims of a new genocide. So I would like to ask everyone now, why do you think this is happening? Why there's this these two very different narratives? Why do they become one in the context of COVID-19? Yes, Simone?
Yes, perhaps let me add a German perspective on this. As of course, the Holocaust is a very, very discussed topic in Germany and is very present, still thinking of the Holocaust. So if you now blame to be victims of a new Holocaust going on, this is, you could say, the highest level of victimization you could get in Germany. It's, in my point of view, a perfect perpetrator-victim reversal. So these are people who are choosing something like not going to use vaccination to protect themselves and others, but they want to see themselves as victims, and they start with the highest level of escalation, I would say, in Germany you can get. Because if you compare yourself to victims of the Holocaust, on the other hand, this means that the people you see as enemies, as I said, like democratic politicians or scientists, for example, if you see this people and you are the victim of some kind of Holocaust, then all your enemies are the ultimate evil you could face. And this does mean, of course, that it's a perfect justification, for example, for violence and even for terrorism. And we see this all over Europe, that vaccination centers or doctors or scientists, politicians, directors of schools are attacked if they try to protect people and vaccinate or protect their pupils. They are attacked with violence, not only in a way that there are graffitis spread on the vaccination centers or something like that, but doctors, for example, are really physically attacked by people who believe that they harm themselves. So this is really a problem because you have, if you say you are a victim of something so enormous like the Holocaust, you have the perfect excuse to endanger others. So this is, I think, what lies behind it. This is really an important topic. And on the other hand, we can see that the societies are not that clear in their remembrance that they can easily see this. So I think when Germany, when the first people went on the streets with this unvaccinated stars, a lot of people didn't feel very, very comfortable with it, but they were not so sure as well if this is really anti-Semitic. You can see this in press discussions, for example, and so it needs some experts again to come to the discussion and make this clear that this is really a kind of Holocaust denial, which is happening on the streets. If you compare your own decision, which is not made with any pressure on your own life, to a situation where people were really killed by their government, like in National Socialism.
Thank you, Simone. Anikó?
Yeah, actually, as Giulia said, there are differences between countries, and Hungary is one of the countries where this Holocaust comparisons is not that frequent in the Anti-Vax discourse, basically because of the fact that, as I said before, the far right started to be the dominant force of the Anti-Vax discourse recently, and they are actually more Holocaust denials and in Hungary, and more relativize the Holocaust and don't have this kind of very, in Hungary, this new way of right-wing discourse when they are somehow embedding the Holocaust in there, to use it actually. But in general, I think that for all the situations in all the countries, it's understandable to have a victim identity if you are insecure, and it's an easy way to find the reasons behind outside in the outside world, and you don't have responsibility if you are a victim. It's a basic truth for many situations. It's a good way, it's a good feeling in a way to be a victim of the situations. But I also wanted to highlight that I think it's also used because of it's used by the creators and spreaders of this the Holocaust comparisons. I mean, used by the creators and spreaders of anti-vax discourse to implicitly say that we are not denying the Holocaust. So in many people's eyes, it's still anti-Semitism and relativization of the Holocaust is basically the Holocaust denial is the only problem if related to the Holocaust discourse. So if you say that we don't deny it, but we compare our suffering to the Jewish people who suffered during the Second World War, it means for many people that they are above all not anti-Semitic. So I think it's a good way to sell these ideas. And yeah, it's a vicious circle. Just refer to the victim identity in general. That if you ban this discourse, it will create more victimized identity. So if there is a removal of my post, if I experience that I cannot communicate, I'm the victim of the situation more and more. So yeah, this is a vicious circle also.
Thank you. Before I open the floor to our Q&A, I would like to ask all of you again, if you think that there is a solution to all this hate that is being created by these conspiracy theories.
Okay, I'm gonna take this one, although I don't really know why, because I can't really be very joyful about this and just tell everybody that, oh, you should just do this and this will just disappear suddenly. Obviously it won't, and I think in your report you made some very good recommendations as to how to fight the spread of conspiracy theories and other hateful ideas. But basically, even if all of those recommendations were completely put in place, I think suddenly, magically, that would not solve probably the whole issue. I think it's just there's been so many kind of changes within societies and the political spectrum and our world and our communication, both technologically and the way we talk to each other, that I think coming back from this is going to be extremely hard, and it might take actually kind of just, well, let's say nuking this new public sphere that we've created in the past like 10 to 15 years and trying to build something much more discourse focused and a lot less profit oriented than what we have right now. I'm not really sure that we, like, short of that, what really could change this course that we are on right now as far as our public discourse goes. And these conspiracy theories obviously are very integral part now to this discussion, sadly.
Thank you. Giulia, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's a bit on the same line. Like, I think we cannot think that we can eliminate these. And yeah, we are not that naive, even though when I talk about it with friends, and like, it seems that they think that working in this sector kind of we could achieve something like that. It's definitely not possible, or at least I'm very pessimistic. But what we can do is to reduce it or to limit the spread, because now with social media, we can, like, content can be shared and seen by millions of people in seconds. So yeah, in the recommendations, so we put together some recommendations in our report that they all they might contribute to limit the spread. And I wanted to mention two. So one is education. So media and digital literacy is the key. We also, because often when we talk about mainstream media have a very important role in sharing trustworthy information, and all that is absolutely true. But sometimes people who are already far out in believing some conspiracy narratives don't watch mainstream media at all, because they are already blamed as part of the elite trying to brainwash people. So this education should be done like at school, like media literacy education should be done in schools, but also training and other occasions to engage with people of all age backgrounds, not just young people, though it is very important with young people to educate them about anti-Semitic tropes surfacing on social media, and it is tropes that are not evidently anti-Semitic. So if you don't know that it is an anti-Semitic trope because of these anti-Semitic dog whistles, you are not gonna, you might not be able to see it. So education is really important to understand. And then I wanted to mention cooperation with IT companies. In the past few years, there has been a lot of progress, but it's definitely not enough. So it's a call for IT companies to keep working with civil society organizations and with experts and with academics, to listen to what we are witnessing, what we are seeing on social media, and work together to improve their policies and to remove content that is clearly illegal. Yeah, just two small big points.
Thank you, Giulia. Anikó, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you. So after this, maybe I will sound naive or at least critical. So I think we have to target the core problem, why people are susceptible for conspiracy theories, and insecurity is a very important core of this problem. And we have to focus on that, and insecurity increases the need for belonging. And we have to understand that these online platforms are providing a community also. So we don't have only removal and banning and stop this discourse will not have an effect on that. So we will not cure the problem if we just cure the effects of it. So I think it's important to increase the trust in institutions and in the establishment, and also try to provide more inclusive messages and not to distinct people between each other, against each other, and make more feeling of fear and this feeling of uncertainties, because we all live in uncertain times. We have to admit that, and we have to react on that and include as many people as we can to our communication, both as leaders and as social media companies also. I would also recommend to pinpoint the controversies of these anti-vax discourses, like we already discussed, these Holocaust comparisons. At the same time, some of them, the far-right actors are denying the Holocaust. So what is your point? So actually question them openly. And also another example that they are for democracy and democratic rights to have a right to not be vaccinated. At the same time, they are denying minority rights. So what is your point towards democracy and this kind of controversies to highlight? And Giulia said the importance of education. Of course, it's important, but I think it's not only providing information and teaching about anti-Semitism and these kind of tropes, but also have honest conversations about all of us uncertainties that we are living in, and have a discussion that all of us has insecure feelings, and what would be the ultimate goal of education, I think, to teach the complexity of the world and not see things in black and white. And if you have insecure feelings in your life, it's not the ultimate solution for that to scapegoating another group, because it's a simple answer, but to find what you can do, and also accept that unfortunately there are uncertainties and things that we don't know, and we have lack of information, and just try to teach about how to handle this situation. I think it's also important, and be honest with ourselves in this.
Thank you, Anikó. I see that we have a lively discussion in the chat, and there's also a question from Daniel. First, I would like to ask Daniel if he wants to ask his question.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, thank you for an interesting discussion. Yeah, my question really is, do you think there's a risk you're really underestimating the problem in the way you frame the discussion? Because in particular, everyone is focused on the far right. And I should emphasize, I hate the far right as much as everyone else. But if you really focus on the far right, to me, it makes it too easy. Because what you do is you underestimate what it seems to me is a much broader problem in society, which makes it much more difficult to deal with. So just 3 examples. First of all, if you have a pandemic and a lockdown, where you lock down people for a year and a half, even if that lockdown is entirely necessary, what you're doing is increasing the insecurity that Anikó referred to, it seems to me. So if you're breaking down social bonds, you're making it hard for people to see friends and family. As I say, even if you think that's necessary, that's a different debate. What you're going to do is to increase insecurity. And that, to me, seems to provide a breeding ground for conspiracy theories. Secondly, it seems to me that the whole narrative of fear is mainstream. It's not just about the far right at all. I mean, and Tamás referred to it a bit, I think, so that, if you look at the discussion around climate change in COP26, again, I'm not saying it's not a real thing. Climate change is a very real thing. But all too often, rather than being presented as the problem that we as humans can solve, there's a whole narrative of fear around it, that, oh my God, we're all gonna die, the planet is at such great risk, things are so terrible. That's just one example of how it seems to me fear is very much a mainstream problem, a mainstream phenomenon. It exists on the far right, but not confined to the far right. I'll put something on the chat, by the way. The Great Reset theory, the origins of that are thoroughly mainstream. They're not with the far right. They come from the World Economic Forum, which is, until the pandemic, met at Davos every year. Certainly not a conspiracy, because they would talk very openly about what they believe. The origins of the Great Reset theory are mainstream. They're not with the far right. Finally, it seems to me that if you try to ban speech and ban people from putting forward their ideas, even if your intention is good, what you're likely to do is to strengthen conspiracy theories, not weaken them, which is one reason why it's very hard to tackle them. So just to sum up, it seems to me that by focusing so much on the far right, it seems to me you're ignoring what is a far bigger and more difficult problem to solve.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone would like to answer? Simone?
Yes, I really would like to answer. That's true. I think Daniel is quite right about a lot of things. And for me personally, I would say this is also the most threatening thing. I feel that this conspiracy ideology exactly do not only resonate within the far right scene or the right populist scene or something like that, but we also saw it also in the middle of society or even in progressive scenes. And this brings us perhaps to a topic which I would have added to the discussion before already, but I still can put it in now, that we have seen, for example, in Germany, that if you look who is clinging to this conspiracy ideologies, you see that you do not only need media literacy trainings, for example, we do need them though, but, and I really agree on that, But we see that we have a more basic problem, for example, with critical thinking, for example. That people, for example, went to this demonstration because they were really unhappy with the measures the government, for example, was taking. But instead of just saying what is the problem and why they felt unhappy with the measures, they cling to anti-Semitic tropes. And even though if they don't know it or do not realize this is a really big problem. And I think we have to talk, for example, about also with politically left scenes about why you can criticize, for example, economy or things like that without being anti-Semitic and without being anti-American, for example, because that does not help, but it leads you into the world of conspiracy ideologies. But I see that there's still a lot of discussions to do also on this topic of ambiguity tolerance, so that sometimes we are in a situation where there is no simple solution. And we saw that a lot of people from all over the political field could not really work with this, or with the fact that scientists, for example, didn't have a perfect solution ready, and that they had to realize how science works, so that you will have different approaches and people discussing and finding a solution together. But this also makes it very easy for people who are really only looking for the parts of the puzzle which are not fitting to always find a hint in reality to build the conspiracy ideologies on. And so I think what we have to do to work on this topic should be really more going to the basic communication facts of our society, even though I have to disagree with Daniel on the last point where he said it's not a good idea to ban these discriminatory or anti-Semitic content online, because I see it that the spread of all these hate online, we had this for 10 years now, I would say, and it didn't help not to ban it. So to have some values, we are also applying to social media discourse and saying you can't do this in the offline world, you shouldn't do this online, should not be able to discuss this online here as well on platforms which are aimed for mainstream society. I think this is still very important.
Thank you, Simone. Tamás?
Yes, I just wanted to add some points, I guess, because it is true that fear is definitely very much part of this, but I also think that what we should consider is this breaking down of trust within societies, especially towards the ruling class or the political class or the state in general. I mean, if we just look away for a little bit from conspiracy theories and look at vaccine hesitancy outside of conspiracy theories, and why that happens and the levels of it, then you can see that the further you go towards Eastern Europe and behind the former, Iron Curtain, vaccine hesitancy, starts to grow. I mean, it's not an accident that Romania and Bulgaria had, awful third waves during the end of the summer. And just look at Russia, where they have their own vaccine, and yet only 20-something% of the population are vaccinated. So this lack of trust towards the state is definitely something that can be addressed, without thinking of social media and conspiracy theories, but that's a start, and that's where it kind of relates to conspiracy theories, that these people are definitely providing fertile ground for conspiracy theories, and they can be dragged into them, and then they can be internalized, and then from vaccine hesitancy we arrive to anti-vax conspiracy theories, and it's a lot harder to bring kind of people back from that. And I also wanted to reflect on the second point Daniel made, and I also tend to disagree with him to a certain extent, because on one hand, in a perfect world, it would be a lot better to kind of have a very, very well prepared, debating person next to every anti-Semite on the internet, or next to every conspiracy theorist, who can just sit there and tell everybody that this is just complete, idiocy, and do it in a very, very intelligent and calm way, not a shouting match. So they can't be kind of pushed out like that right away. So that would be definitely ideal, but even that wouldn't necessarily work completely. And I think that with these new technologies, conspiracies and discriminatory content have a tendency to spread so much faster than the truth that you simply cannot catch up with debate. It's simply impossible. I mean, social media companies have become way better in the past 5 or 6 years in removing stuff, and it's still just a drop in the ocean, really. So I think it's both. We have to try to bring back debate somehow to a certain extent, but we also need to moderate content, because we just can't debate every piece of content that becomes, that comes online. And just one last point. That we also need to be very, very careful about who we debate, because it's not necessarily the best thing to kind of put the limelight on people who spread hate and conspiracies by debating them and giving them legitimacy through these debates, because then they can be called in for an interview for the BBC to see the other side's arguments and stuff like that, and suddenly they are a legitimate expert on COVID or climate change or whatever other topic that can be contentious sometimes in our societies. So we have to be kind of thoughtful of that side of this issue too.
Thank you, Tamás. Umer asked earlier, much earlier in the discussion, he said that I wonder how the existing political discourses of populism have fueled these anti-vax conspiracies and anti-Semitism. Anyone want to take this question?
I can.
And
yeah, but just very briefly to Daniel's comments, that I agree with many of them, and what he said, that basically this is what I also wanted to say, that insecurity is a shared feeling, and it's becoming mainstream. This discourses and okay, I don't want to answer the removal aspect of it, because okay, I will answer this question first. That the populism and these theories has a very same basis, the distinction between different groups, so they can fuel each other and back and forth, I think. So populism can fuel, of course, these theories, and these theories can fuel populism, and the basic of them is a simple worldview, and it's very much needed in the current situation to make a simple answer to these questions around us, and find somewhere outside the source of the problem, who causes our suffering. So I think it's very logical to that they belong to each other, populism and conspiracy theories, and they appear in a combined way. And what is new, and not new, but it's a new trend, what Tamás referred previously, that this kind of theories made more acceptable by the mainstream society by populism, I think, and this is the main problem of that. Yeah. And okay.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions from the participants? I will take advantage of my two hats today and I noticed that all of you mentioned fear, and fear is also mentioned in the chat. And it's also an element that we saw in the report. And what we mean by fear is that fear is everywhere in conspiracy theories. It's the fear of, when it comes to COVID-19, is the fear of dying, the fear of losing yourself and your identity, or the fear of losing your national identity. Because, for example, a very prominent Greek conspiracy theory is that the vaccine changes your Greek DNA, which is supposed to be very special. It's extremely insane, but I would be lying if I said that I haven't heard it from family members. I do not understand it myself, but it's always there. In every Greek conspiracy theory, the Greek DNA is there. And fear is always there. In every conspiracy theory, fear is very, very present. And that's why in the report as well, we emphasize the element of fear in this. I have some more questions for our experts today. And I would like to ask, we have seen that, for example, Anne Frank is mentioned in anti-vax conspiracy theories. So what do you think the child in the form of Anne Frank, or for example, the child as we're going to lose our children if we have this vaccine, why do you think it's used as an argument in conspiracy theories? And why do you think the use of Anne Frank comparisons are so widespread currently? Yes, Simone?
Perhaps I start with a child question, because I love this, because it's a topic I'm always very interested in. We see these argumentations of child protection in a lot of anti-democratic movements. Also, the far-right scene in Germany uses this for lots of years, taking the subject of child protection, or at least call it child protection, because this is something like, I would say, like an emotional blackmail, especially on parents, but and on mothers, but I think all over society as well, because this is something where you can only have one answer. Nobody wants to say, I don't want to protect children, I don't care about them. So if you use this child argumentation, which is very, very much used in Germany as well, you always have the feeling of being the good in this discourse, and caring for children is something which also relates, of course, to some nationalist or traditionalist argumentations. For example, it's a role for mothers. We see a lot of conspiracy activists on the streets in Germany who are female, who concentrate on this motherly argument to protect the children, for example. But on the other hand, you can always very easily see in the protest that it's just used as an argument, and that they do not really care about child protection, because, for example, in Telegram groups in Germany, they have really strategic discussions that the parents should come with their children to these demonstrations, to put them in the first line, to protect the whole demonstration, that the police, for example, does not use any water cannons or things like that if children are in the first row. So this is a really very strategic use. And if you saw these demonstrations in Germany, but also all over Europe, they are not peaceful demonstrations. They are demonstrations with conflict. So any parents who think it's a good idea to drag their children in the first line of such a demonstration are not very much thinking about how frightened these children might be within a mass of very emotional protesters, for example. And we saw it also that they put them on stages, so, and made their children the small notes that they had to say that they are unhappy wearing a mask in school or things like that. This is really a very strategic political use of children, which really thinks counter arguments this we want to protect children argument very much. Nonetheless, we see it in QAnon discussions, as children held in cellars and are killed by these elites or things like that. It's also always used to mobilize people And I think it's working quite well. You could see this in this anti-vax discussions also, and the demonstrations that really a lot of people start to get mobilized if you use this child argument. For example, we had special groups aiming at parents, which were called Eltern stehen auf, and called these parents to go to their kindergartens, to their schools, and ask every director not to protect the children, not make them wear masks because they felt that they could be unhappy if they never saw people smile. Everyone who has children knows that children adapt to situations and do not have so many problems as their parents sometimes to see what is a good idea if it protects others. So this is a very interesting topic, I think.
Thank you, Simone. Giulia?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that accusations around the danger against children are also a recurring theme in conspiracy narratives, and especially anti-Semitic conspiracy narratives. So I just wanted to mention the false allegation that Jews used to use the blood of non-Jewish, usually Christian children for ritual purposes. So the blood libel is something that has been happening for centuries. So, and the Nazis were using this accusation as well. So this is still like something that is recurring. And yeah, as Simone said, it's like who is against the children is something that they use to gather consensus.
Thank you, Giulia. Tamás, did you want to add something?
Yes, just a very quick point is that basically conspiracy theories at their heart are always aimed at our emotions, our fears, our insecurities, and that we are losing our culture, our lives, our health. And children are just, the quintessential kind of emotional trigger for everybody. Protecting our children means protecting our future, protecting our loved ones, protecting, the innocent, and all the other things that are kind of we think of when we think of children. So it's definitely not an accident that all conspiracy theories at some point bring in, protecting children or the other side, attacking our children, because that's an emotional trigger that many people can resonate with, and that brings in more people into the fold.
Thank you, Tamás. Anikó?
Yeah, I think you didn't mention, but maybe it's obvious that Anne Frank is the one of the most famous symbol of the Holocaust, and this people can react to that very easily. This is another reason. But I also wanted just very briefly to react what you said, Maria, about the fear, and I also tried to say that the fear is the core, and our basic task, I think, who are working on this field, to distinguish between accepting the fears and understand the core of the fears and insecure feelings without normalizing these theories and scapegoating mechanisms. So I think this is the key, and this is what we have to focus on. So this hasn't been said, I think.
Thank you very much. I just checked the time and it's 6:30. I can certainly talk about conspiracy theories for an endless amount of time, and I'm sure you as well, but I think it's time to end this discussion. I would like to thank Giulia, Tamás, Anikó, and Simone for joining us today. It was a really interesting discussion, and I think it sparked a very lively conversation in the chat. I would like to say that, first of all, I will paste the link to the report that Media Diversity Institute has published. It was published today. I would like to say that generally these are the themes that we discussed today are themes that we are generally focusing on an MDI and through our projects like Get the Trolls Out, a project called Jerry's, right, RDN 2.0, and of course COVID that focuses on COVID-19. So if you keep an eye on our social media website, we will be seeing more and more about these issues as well as others. From the Graduate Center of Europe, our theme of the year is decolonization, and our conference will be focusing on that. You can follow GCFE on social media to learn more about our events. The next event is on the 9th, I want to say 9th of December, but it might be the 6th. And I would like to thank everyone who attended on Tuesday evening. Thank you so much.